حياكم الله في برنامج عام زايد. في هذه الحلقة الخاصة التي نروي فيها قصص ومواقف وروايات لمقيمين عايشوا فترة حكم الشيخ زايد طيب الله ثراه، هذا الرجل الذي سبق المراحل وحقق الكثير من الإنجازات بشكل قياسي. على الرغم من صعوبة البدايات إلا أن ذلك لم يكن حجر العثرة في وجه الدكتورة الألمانية فراوكة هيردباي التي كتبت عن تاريخ دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وعن سيرة ومسيرة القائد المؤسس الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان رحمه الله. فهي من الأوائل الذين قاموا بالتوثيق لتاريخ الإمارات. وصلت الدكتورة فراوكة هيردباي الحاصلة على الدكتوراه في التاريخ والعلوم السياسية من برلين عام 1967 وحطت الرحال بمدينة أبو ظبي.
Well, I came to the UAE 51 years ago, almost to the day, in November 1967, by way of Bahrain, because no big planes from overseas did come to Abu Dhabi at that time. So I went from Munich via Rome to Bahrain, and my husband David, who had already been living in Abu Dhabi for 4 years, he came to meet me in Bahrain, and then we went by DC-3 Gulf Aviation, little plane, to Abu Dhabi. And I'm sure you would want to know as well what Abu Dhabi looked like at that time. And I can tell you that the airport was very just one low building and no formalities, and get into a car and drive over the desert to the house that was my husband already prepared. It was one of 36 houses that the Abu Dhabi Petroleum Company had built for their staff, for the families who had a year previous, in 1966, come from Bahrain to live in Abu Dhabi.
I came on the 3rd of August 1963, and I didn't come to Abu Dhabi, I came to Jebel Dana, because the aircraft I was on only got that far. It had engine trouble, and then I went on to Tarif, where I lived there for many years, 3 years in Tarif, before moving into Abu Dhabi in 1966. I came here to look for oil. I was a petroleum engineer, and I was involved in the discovery of a number of the big oil fields in the desert. The first oil out of the ground I had in my hands in Asab and Sahil, and so on. But everything has changed. That's all long ago.
Abu Dhabi was then a small town, but nevertheless a growing town. And a water pipeline had been built, and it was commissioned, I think it became useful in about 1965, from a line. So there was a pipeline that brought water to the town and to everybody, and also to our compound. Sweet water, which was so important. But it was still a time when most people lived in barastis, we call it barastis, khema, the khema min nahl, and there couldn't have been water inside the buildings, the houses, so the ladies, the women still had to go to fetch water, but at least it was a pipeline that had many taps through the town, and people go there. And there are lovely photographs also to show where women, many people took their donkeys, and the donkeys had water containers on either side, and they were filled and taken home. We were lucky enough to have running water on tap. We had electricity. And very soon after, in 68 following, already in 67, many areas of Abu Dhabi outside this nucleus where the town, the original town was, there were houses being built by the hundreds, new houses for the family, and they very soon moved from these khayma to proper cement-built houses with water and with electricity, and therefore also air conditioning. And people were extremely happy and, of course, grateful to the person who had made this possible. And, you know, Sheikh Zayed continued to do this and continued to develop Abu Dhabi.
The first time I heard about Sheikh Zayed was when I was still in Tarif, because he came to visit nearby in about 64 or 65. The first time I met him must have been about 68 or 69, when he was receiving people on the occasion of the Eid. And obviously we would go along, and in those days there were not so many people in Abu Dhabi like today, or in the Emirates like today, and anyone could go along, and I think almost anyone did. Anyway, not all the Europeans went along because they were a bit shy perhaps, but I was determined to go and see him and shake his hand. Well, I met Sheikh Zayed on so many occasions that it's a bit difficult to tell you very much, except that obviously I continued to go along on most Eids or National Day, when National Day was celebrated, and one could go along. Times have changed, of course, and I think one of the experiences that I will never forget was in must have been about end of the 60s. We were in a lane, and one of our friends said, on the way back to Abu Dhabi, let's go and see Sheikh Zayed. All right, it was getting dark and we didn't know, we had no warning of this, and we stopped beside the road, and there were some Land Rovers waiting for us, and we drove into the desert, not very far, in among the dunes, and there was Sheikh Zayed camped there with a number of his friends and associates, and we sat around this big campfire with a few rugs spread here and there on the ground, and some tents over behind, and we sat with Sheikh Zayed there, and people told stories and had a good laugh about this, that and the other, and it was all very relaxed and just very pleasant. And he obviously was very much at home in the sand. I think one of the things about Sheikh Zayed was that he was very, very approachable, and he was also very interested in what one was doing, and he knew that I was with the oil company, and he also knew that I was married, because my wife frequently came along with me, and he knew that in those days we kept some gazelles in the garden. We had a larger garden, and he would always ask about the gazelles. But what was very much on my wife's mind on one occasion was that she had recently given birth to a baby boy. So there was a certain amount of confusion about baby boy or baby gazelle, because our Arabic was not very good. But he was wonderful about it.
انتقلت الدكتورة فراوكا هيرتباي إلى مدينة أبو ظبي بعد زواجها من البريطاني ديفيد هيرد، وهو الخبير النفطي الذي يعد شاهد عيان على المتغيرات الكبيرة في مدينة أبو ظبي والمنطقة ككل، وعلى عبقرية الوالد المؤسس الشيخ زايد رحمه الله. تفاصيل أكثر بعد الفاصل.
Things were happening absolutely everywhere, and we knew people who were involved with the building, the consultants from mostly British consultant, but also Canadian and so on. And one talked to these people, and they also told us that Sheikh Zayed they never knew, he might turn up any day, any morning, on any building site and see what was going on. And friends of ours, for instance, were involved in the building the wharf for the harbour, for Abu Dhabi harbour, and they brought huge amounts, boats full of stones and other material. And again, his friends told us that one day Sheikh Zayed turned up and then always also, almost joined in. And on another occasion, we knew that he had wanted to preserve the tower by the Magda Bridge, which stood in the middle of the Magda Bridge. And before the bridge was built, it was a ford, and it could only be people could only cross at low water tide, and this tower was there for someone to tell people the tide and anyway to guard, and he was there. And Sheikh Zayed must have been worried that this bridge was maybe need some some help and to be refurbished. And this friend of this big German company, this friend of ours, one morning was told, come to the shore up there by the Magda. And so Sheikh Zayed came, and they went together in the boat and inspected this tower, and then it was decided what needs to be done. And that, there are many examples where Sheikh Zayed just was concerned with everything that was going on. And that was mostly still before 1971. So his first concern and his thought of how to develop things was concentrated obviously on Abu Dhabi and Al Ain and the western region that we should not forget that Sheikh Zayed also initiated means to settle people who were Bedouin or nomads or whatever we call people who but also where some of them settled in the Liwa in the big sands and in little oases. And Sheikh Zayed wanted them to have a center where one could eventually have schools, hospitals, and everything else that one needs. And so slowly, they were settled in Bidar Zayed in the west of Abu Dhabi. And then, in due course, other settlements even further west. But the idea was slowly disseminated because many people actually were initially not all that keen to live in a concrete building because they were used to a different kind of life, and that was also being respected. And in many cases, people perambulated between the two, and that was respected. And later, actually, also again became a theme, I think, of Sheikh Zayed's, that he wanted people not to lose and to forget their heritage and what they used to be able to do best. And that is, for instance, rear camels, good camels, fast camels or sturdy camels or whatever. And so in about, I think, the late 70s or so, the idea was set in motion that people were encouraged, the tribal people, not only in Abu Dhabi by that time, in Ras Al Khaimah, everywhere, tribal people were encouraged to breed camels and have competitions against each other so that you see which is the good one. And then they buy off each other the best camel and so on. And it then ended up with a big industry of breeding camels for their speed and recently even for particular beauty attributes.
Well, I have also been writing up the history of the oil company, how it came here and so on, and of course Sheikh Zayed appears frequently in that story. And I think one of the interesting things about Sheikh Zayed in that story was that he was very interested in all that was going on around him, but he was also most interested in the welfare of his people, and he was very concerned about, in those days, the poverty that people endured here, and he was determined to do something about it, and he did. Working in a lane, he improved the water's flow in the Falaj and improved the gardens and so on. And so I've seen this through the archive material, and it was in the archive material there are little personal things, like that he came to our drilling rig, the company drilling rig at Ras Sadr. Ras Sadr, you know, is between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and it's where the first oil well was drilled on the Trucial Coast or in the Emirates. And that was long ago in 1950, and he came many times to this place. And on one occasion, he actually brought his mother with him to see a film there. It was just an expression of a simple and yet very deep man. Simple in the sense that he was able to, do everyday things which his people understood and also foreigners understood. And yet very deep in the sense that he was very much involved in all that was around him, the welfare of his people, and in due course, of course, the welfare of his country.
I think it was the celebrating Sheikh Zayed's accession day in August 1968. It was 6th of August 1968, and there was a very sort of modest lot of attend and a reception thing in front of the old fort, the Qasr al-Hassan, and a parade went past and Sheikh Zayed was there. And after that, he received people just outside the old fort, or no, in fact, it was inside the old fort, a building on the right, which was later turned in for a little while, was a museum. And on the steps of that, Sheikh Zayed was available for anyone who came forward to shake his hand and say, Eid Mabruk, Mabruk al-Munasiba, or whatever.
When Sheikh Zayed first became involved in the oil industry was back in 1937, when he accompanied a survey party over to the far west of Abu Dhabi. I see in the records that he was always interested in what was going on in the oil industry, and I think when he became ruler and then president of the UAE, he still was very much involved. And after the establishment of ADNOC in 1971, he was still keen to see the people from the Western companies, the foreign companies. That was, of course, the company that I was working for, as well as BP on offshore, and was very much involved. He wanted to know what was going on, and they would come to him from London, and I would sit in on some of these meetings. And he really was there. He wanted to know and to find out exactly what was happening, what the problems were, and also what the successes were too. And he was very knowledgeable about what was going on in the oil industry, surprisingly so, actually, for someone in his position. So we would sit on the lawn at the Sea Palace, or we would sit on the sand somewhere and talk about these matters. But also I used to see him among his own people. I remember once I heard in about early 70s that he was doing things down in the Liwa area. And so I drove down there, and they were moving an enormous amount of sand, and he was supervising this, and I thought, goodness, this is quite amazing with these bulldozers everywhere. Anyway, I came up to him and chatted, and then in my not very good Arabic, and then he said, well, of course, you come back and have dinner with us in Medina Zaid with Sheikh Mohammed bin Bouti. And so I did, and it was very nice, very pleasant. I was going with some friends, Abu Dhabi friends, by boat to Halat al-Bahrani, and we knew that Sheikh Zayed was somewhere in that area. We found that we had to go further to another island, Bakshesha, and we came up to this island, and as we were approaching it, we saw him watering the trees that he had recently planted. And he was very relaxed, just with a hose. And so we got out of the boat, came up and approached him. And as we approached him, he turned the hose on us to water us. I mean, to make us wet. It was a playful way and a humorous way that he had that with people. He just enjoyed being a normal sort of person. And so if you see friends approaching, you might well turn the water hose on them, and it was just really rather nice. And then we got into another boat which he had there, a flat-bottomed boat, and we went in among the mangroves, and we had with us someone called Buti bin Bisha, who has long since passed away, a very nice man. And he, among the mangroves, was imitating whistling birds. I think Sheikh Zayed was very much a man of the people. He always had their best interests foremost in his mind, that the welfare of his people, the people of Abu Dhabi and of the Emirates.
يعد كتاب من الإمارات المتصالحة إلى دولة الإمارات من أهم الكتب التي وثقت لتاريخ دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. وبالنسبة للدكتورة فراوكة هيرباي، فالشيخ زايد استخدم كل ما توفر لديه من إمكانيات حتى يحقق حلم الاتحاد وبناء دولة مستقرة. أما السيد ديفيد هيرد هو أحد أبرز من عملوا إلى جانب الشيخ زايد وأحد مؤسسي شركة نفط أبو ظبي المحدودة للمناطق البرية.
I'm a historian, but initially my speciality was not the Middle East, but living here and realizing that it wouldn't be just for a year or two, I then decided that the Middle East, or particularly the Gulf, would be my field of interest. And before I had published, my thesis was published as a book, so I also had, let's say, the confidence that eventually I could write something that people outside would appreciate, because at the time in the late 60s, nobody in Europe knew anything about the Gulf or was interested in it until the British government decided to have this this unexpected decision to leave its protective agreements and abrogate these agreements in 1968. And that, of course, was a bombshell amongst the media, particularly in Britain, and also amongst the academics who until then had only looked after, and written about the Levant, and then further east, Iran and Afghanistan, possibly. The Gulf in the middle was always sort of, there's nothing happening and nothing to study and so on. And suddenly, wow, the most important thing for certainly British foreign policy was happening in the Gulf. And so journalists came and scholars came and so on. And while these journalists were coming like every 4 months or so and commenting on there's yet another, four-story building or something, I was here and I could observe and I could ask myself questions of how does the society, who are still moving from a khema into a proper building and so on, how does society then digest all these changes, and where do they actually come from? What does it mean, a tribal society? What does it mean, Islamic? I also had no experience, and I wanted to learn. And while I was learning, and you learn best if you have to write it down, so eventually I wrote an article which was published in a journal, in an academic journal in England, and then out of this another article, and out of this eventually I decided to write a book, and that took 10 years. So. But while I was doing this, I had, in order to start my first, help my investigation, help my learning, I realized that there was a small place in the old fort where an Egyptian historian had been asked to accumulate material, written material, archive material and books about this area, in preparation for things to come when the British leave and when things change. So in 1968, this very small center was started in the old fort, and the old fort was Sheikh Zayed's. It was the seat of government. Also, Sheikh Zayed did not live there after he took the reign of government in '66. He lived somewhere else, but his brother had lived there all the 38 years he had been reigning. So it was certainly considered by everyone to be the seat of government, and all visitors who wanted to see Sheikh Zayed came to the old fort, and then they were told, well, shiyukh mush hinni bas honak, and people were then directed to where they should go. But the people who worked for him, worked with him, they were all still around there, and so this little center was also anchored there. And I went there to inform myself, and there were books that Dr. Morsi had already collected from Cairo and from Beirut and so on from 1968 onwards. And I got there in 1969 to use the place, started to work in the center, which then grew, and we were 3 people when I started, and I was there for 39 years. We were in the old fort. The center was exactly 30 years in the old fort, growing, and by June of '98, the entire old fort, with its many inside buildings and outdoor buildings and so on, were all part of the center or an exhibition, various exhibitions that our center had been asked to organize. And over all of this, and between the center, which Sheikh Zayed, very much supported and visited, but between him and us was His Excellency Ahmed Khalifa Suwaidi, who at the time was he was the Rais Diwan, and then he was Rais Diwan al-Hakim, and then of course the president, and then the foreign minister. And our center was actually at times hooked to the foreign ministry for practical reasons, because we were getting material from other people's archives, from British and French and German and even some Russian and so on. And all of this was easily arranged through the foreign ministry. So Ahmed Khalifa Suwaidi was in a double capacity over all of this. And then the Cultural Foundation was built next door, and the Center for Documentation then became administratively part of the Cultural Foundation. And again, Sheikh Zayed favored the Cultural Foundation and all that was going on there, and Sheikha Fatima, because quite a few times the ladies got their shahada there, when they had finished not only school but also university or higher college. Sheikh Zayed gave them the shahada. So the Cultural Foundation is very dear to the heart of many of those girls, because it was a very important moment in their lives. And I was there when these things happened. كلمات من شيخ زايد في كلمات كثير, of course, في كتب أو مجموعة عن كلمات, بس أنا كتاريخ أستاذة تاريخ أنا أحب الكلمة هو قلت إذا الناس ما عندهم تاريخ أو ما يعرفون تاريخهم ما عندهم مستقبل.
للملياردير الهندي يوسف علي الذي قدم إلى الإمارات عام 1973 مواقف كثيرة مع المغفور له بإذن الله تعالى الشيخ زايد رحمه الله، فقد اعتمد بشكل كبير على رؤية المغفور له الشيخ زايد في تحقيق طموحاته في مجال المال والأعمال، حتى أضحى من كبار الأغنياء في العالم.
From my childhood, I came to know about His Highness Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. My father, my uncle, when they come back from UAE, at that time they were speaking about the development and the citizens of this great country, how the citizens are treating expatriates in this country. They are telling all because of His Highness Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. He was not only a ruler, he was an institution, he was university, he was statesman, he was a great philosopher, he was great environmentalist, he was great educationalist, and His Highness Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid was thinking about the development of United Arab Emirates, but also Sheikh Zaid was thinking about the development of the Arab world and also the development of the other countries. See, when I came here in 1973, December 31st, I came by ship named Dumra, and that ship came to Dubai port, and my uncle was there to receive me and came, see here. At that time, I know what infrastructure was, and I saw the growth of the infrastructure which all laid the foundation stone by His Highness Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. Whatever the development we are seeing here in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi, all the architect of this development was His Highness Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. He was a great donor. He was also thinking about poor people. See, I can tell one each. What I told, I can explain about that. See how many universities in this country now, how many schools in this country now, how many kindergartens for small children in this country. All the vision of His Highness Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. See the trees and the gardens and the parks in this great country, and particularly in Abu Dhabi. All the architect was His Highness Sheikh Zaid bin Sultan Al Nahyan. Because Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid believed that the tolerance, each respect with other religion, and respect to other religion is a part of Islam. Once upon I went to Kenya. I went to Mombasa. And when I was going to see a Malindi, there is a place there I want to see there, I saw a remote area. See Sheikh Zaid's school, Sheikh Zaid for orphanage. So in that country, I'm talking about 35 years before, and I stopped there and see how beautifully they made. This is in the remote area of Kenya. In that way, Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid constructed a lot of charitable institutions, universities, schools, not only in UAE, but also all over the world. That shows the magnanimity and the help and thinking about education for the future generation for Allah Rahmah Sheikh Zaid. First time in 1974 I met Sheikh Zaid occasionally, and I used to meet Sheikh Zaid. I used to go for Eid to say salam with my father, I used to go to Al-Bahar Palace. So, any small child come, any nationality come, Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed stand and say salam. Once upon a time, Sheikh Zayed, Allah Rahman, told me to sit near Sheikh Zayed. I am afraid because all other sheikhs there, how I can sit near? That Allah, Ijlis. That is how he loves the people. He loves not only the nationalities, he loves the expatriates also. I can show that photo that I am sitting near Sheikh Zayed. So that affection, love, full of his heart. That's why Sheikh Zayed is remembered all over the world. Not only Sheikh Zayed remembering in UAE, not only in the Arab world, the whole world you can see Sheikh Zayed's contribution. I went to India Aligarh Muslim University to accept a doctorate from university. So they told me that the generous contribution in the petroleum technology college is contributed by Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed. When Sheikh Zayed visited Aligarh, it's a historical university in India, Aligarh Muslim University. More than 120,000 to 150,000 students are studying there. So Sheikh Zayed contribution in education, in the petroleum education, petroleum technology in India. So like that, educational institutions, religious institutions, charitable institutions, Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed contributed a lot. When I sat near Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed, Sheikh Zayed asked me, "Kaif hanud Hindi?" How the Indians are here. We all love Your Highness. We all pray for you, Your Highness, for the long life, health. Oh, mashkoor. You see, if anybody pray for His Highness, say mashkoor, thank you. That is the generosity that Sheikh Zayed showed to all the people staying in this country. I used to see at that time a lot of world leaders are coming, meeting Sheikh Zayed. World leaders is an official visit, not only the official visit. I saw what the world leaders are talking after the meeting with Sheikh Zayed. Sheikh Zayed, as I mentioned, was a great statesman. So people, world leaders come here to meet and take advice from Sheikh Zayed. What is Your Highness' opinion? Which way? So many world leaders are coming to sit with Sheikh Zayed, because Sheikh Zayed is wisdom, like encyclopedia. All the subjects, Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed was thorough. Not only one subject, because Sheikh Zayed used to give advice that you should go this way, you should this way, that way. After the meeting, leaders tell in this country or the other country. I heard from a late Indira Gandhi, the former Prime Minister of India. She visited Sheikh Zayed, and Sheikh Zayed visited India. Indira Gandhi, they were very good brotherly relationship. Once Indira Gandhi told that very few leaders such a knowledge like Allah Rahman Sheikh Zayed. I heard this. Sheikh Zayed's vision was, if the progress, the locals also financially, they should progress. Nowhere in the country world give land, give money for constructing the buildings, and every year taking percentage for the construction, and locals were getting money. So at that time, locals were very happy. This time also locals are very happy, because the same way it is going now. So, whenever His Highness, some locals, means nationalities, my friends told me, whenever His Highness declare, suppose, housing project for the nationality, for the nationals, His Highness will go himself and to check whether that houses are constructing good quality. This is for my people. I declared this project for my people. I want to know the quality is good and construction is going on according to the expectation of Allahumma Sheikh Zaid. Could expect that it should finish within a time. So in that time, whether the project is completing or not, Sheikh Zaid will not send any other people. Sheikh Zaid will go himself and see that this is for my people constructing houses, it is coming on time with good quality. Very leaders like, who is a leader like this to see about their own people, thinking their progress, thinking their houses, thinking about their prosperity, thinking about their children education, thinking about infrastructure for them. So he was a great personality.
تعلم السيد يوسف علي الكثير من الشيخ زايد طيب الله ثراه خلال لقاءاته بالوالد المؤسس، كما تعلم قيمة العمل الجاد والمضني الذي حلق به بعيدا ليصبح الملياردير الهندي يوسف علي من أفضل رجال الأعمال في العالم.
I will tell you my own story. What happened when this Iraq war came? So people were little hesitant to. Some people just taking money and going out from this country. Expatriates, some. I'm talking about expatriates. I started the biggest supermarket, at that time supermarket, in the new airport road, with the big advertisement. Some people came and asked me, this is the time of crisis. How you open this much big? I replied to them, they wrote in the newspaper that this is a country of Sheikh Zaid. Sheikh Zaid was the great donor. And alhamdulillah, nothing will happen to this country if Sheikh Zaid is the ruler. And me, if I go, I'm eating from this country. If something, subhanallah, it will never happen, but if something I go some other place and stay, this no. We'll go with this country. What is the fate of this country? We will accept it. Because Sheikh Zaid's diplomacy, Sheikh Zaid's farsightedness, Allahumma Sheikh Zaid's vision. See, now how the country is progressed. Now the country is progressing. His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, His Highness Sheikh Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum, His Highness Sheikh Muhammad Bilawat, His Highness Sheikh Muhammad bin Zayed Al Nahyan, their vision, all inherited from Allah Rahman Sheikh Zaid. They are taking forward the country. This is one of the most modern country now. European infrastructure, Arabic tradition, Islamic culture, security, visionary leadership, good economy, and ease of business doing. Because from all over the world, people are coming here to invest in this country because they have got visionary leadership here. Economy is strong and security here. So all the investors will think, how this? No, alhamdulillah, people are coming. This is all started by Allahumma Sheikh Zaid. So as a business point of view, also I am talking that this is an investment friendly country. This is ease of doing business country. Because when I met His Highness Allah Rahmah last time in Al-Bahar Palace, Highness asked me, any problem for the business people here? I said, Alhamdulillah, under your leadership, under leadership of Your Highness, your son Sheikhs, everything is normal, Alhamdulillah. And day by day, the laws are changing for ease of doing business. And all the business people here are happy, Your Highness. Every year Ramadan, His Highness used to bring, under Highness instruction, all ulamas coming here. About 40 or 30, 40 ulamas from all over the world coming. I thought, ulamas coming here, speaking, and futur, zuhur, or here in Abu Dhabi, and 20 days they are staying, and they are going back to them. I went to one country. I met one ulama, say salam. Said, where you are staying? I told, I'm staying in Abu Dhabi, UAE. The greatest alim, ulama is telling, I seen is Allah Rahman Sheikh Zaid. I said, I asked her, how you know? I said, because we respect the alims. Said that I came 2 years before Ramadan. Sheikh Zaid invited from different countries. I mingled with the different nationality ulamas in Ramadan, and we were all talking about how Sheikh Zaid, an Islamic ruler, an alim. Every time if I go in Umrah, in Tawaf, I pray for Sheikh Zaid. I am not telling this in the TV, but this is from the heart I am doing. Because I have to do, because I am here. And the benefit from Sheikh Zaid, Allah Rahman, not only the people who are staying here, from all over the world. So, Allah, we all pray that we can see Allah Rahman Sheikh Zaid in Jannah.
هذا زايد وهذه الإمارات التي فتحت أبواب الأحلام والآمال للباحثين عن التميز من أبناء دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة والمقيمين على أرضها الطيبة. نلقاكم الأسبوع المقبل وشهادات أخرى لمقيمين عاشوا على أرض الإمارات الطيبة وخبروا معدن قائد عربي أصيل عظيم هو المغفور له بإذن الله تعالى، الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان، طيب الله.